Hello, this is the student teaching assignment, and this is the topic of the respiratory system. So let's get started. We're going to walk through some of the major structures and organs of the respiratory system, as well as go over how they maintain their function and also how their form helps in through their function. So first, let's go over some of the functions of the respiratory systems. The primary function of the respiratory system is to obviously taking air and breathe it out, or in other words, the inhalation of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide, and also other waste products. Another major function of the respiratory system is the maintaining of the acid-base balance in the human blood system. Now, there for some other non-vital functions, it senses odors, it helps with speech production, and it helps with straining. So during coughing or childbirth, it can trigger that. The respiratory system is mainly divided into the conducting zone and the respiratory zone. And the let's go through a main area of the a short walk of the system. So first, it begins with the nose and the nasal cavity through the nostril, into mouth through the oral cavity, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea. It goes then into the bronchis, and then through the lungs, and finally it ends with the diaphragm. So let's go start at the beginning and back to the conducting zone. So first, there's the nose. There's which is where the air goes in and out. It's the main job to remove debris and pathogens from the incoming air and also humidifies it. So from the outs, there's two sections of the nose. There's the outside and the inside. On the outside, there's a root bridge where the nose begins, the bridge where it starts, the dorsum nasi where the nose pops up. The edge of the nose is formed of cartilage and ella, and there's the apex at the very top, and down at the bottom there's a bridge called philtrum. And within the inside, there's the septal cartilage, there's the major alar cartilage, and the septal cartilage. Let's take another look inside our body, or the nose. There's the sinus. And as the air enters our nose, it goes into the three nasal conchae that separate three parts into three nasal meatuses, the superior, middle, and the inferior. And as the air then eventually travels down to the epiglottis. So the nasal septums form anterior by a portion of the septal cartilage, and formerly posteriorly by the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. So the purpose of the conchae is to increase the surface area of the nasal cavity and also disrupt the flow of air as it enters the nose. This will cause the air to bounce around the epithelium where it is clean and warm. So that's why when we exhale the air out, it's very warm, especially during cold weather. Now, next, let's continue the conducting zone to the pharynx. Is at the very top is the two formed by skeletal muscles and lined by mucous membranes. This helps with inhaling and also with breathing. There's three major regions: the nasopharynx, the orthopharynx, and langreinopharynx. So, as the nasopharynx at top, a soft plate and a hard plate, then through the orthopharynx, it continues in the epiglottis and into the langreinopharynx with the trachea. Let's take a deeper look at the nasopharynx. So it serves as the main airway of the tongue. It contains a rich supply of lymphocytes and carrier of ciliate epithelium that traps and destroys invading pathogens. So with that, and also that's where the air tubes are connected to middle ear. So technically, liquid that goes into your ear, it just went through your mouth. Next, there's the orthopharynx. That's the main passageway for both air and food. It has fauces that open connections between the oral cavity. There's the palatal tonsil that's located laterally in the orthopharynx, and the linguinal tonsil located at the base of the tongue. Last, there's the langreinopharynx that's the very bottom. Both is the route for ingested material and air until its inferior end, and is posteriorly enters the esophagus. Now, let's take a look at the next section of the conducting zone, which is the larynx. It's formed by three large cartilage pieces: the thyroid, epiglottis, and crocoroid. So the thyroid cartilage, which we're going to look at later, is the largest piece of cartilage. It contains a major prominence, or the Adam's apple. It is called that because it is more prominent in males. Next, there's the epiglottis. It's attached to thyroid cartilage and covers the opening of trachea. There's the cricoid cartilage that forms a ring in the posterior region that connects, makes the form of the trachea. And there's the pericartilages, the arytenoids, the corniculates, and the cuneiforms. These attach to the epiglottis and vocal cords that helps the vocal cords move to produce speech. So let's take a look at that. At the top is the epiglottis. There is the thyroid cartilage at the very middle of that, and through the middle there's the ligaments, and also there's the cricoid cartilage, and the very bottom there's the tracheal cartilages. So we can let's take a look at the specific move of the vocal support. So in the middle of the white meat, there's called the glottis. That is the true vocal cord. It produces sound by vibrating, creating speech. So the higher the pitch of the noise, the faster the folds move, and vice versa. Next to it, there's the vestibular folds, or the false vocal cords. These help support area and aid with movement. And outside that, there's the esophagus, the trachea through the end, and connected through the tongue. So now let's take another look at the conducting zone through its end. We've been through the larynx, so now it's through the trachea and to the bronchi. And within those sections, there's the cells that's within it. The important thing is that they're mainly covered by epithelial stratified column epithelia, because that's what helps secretes water and creates a secretion membrane, so you don't get too dry when you move or talk. So now the trachea is formed by 16-20 stacked C-shaped pieces of hyaline cartilage. They are correct to move to be elastic and helps so you can stretch them in case they need to be moved. And it's created by fibroelastic membrane that closes the posterior surface and allows the trachea to stretch and expand during inhalation and exhalation. So next, let's take a look at the bronchial trees. The trees divide into the right and left primary bronchi at the carina, which is the center of the fork here. It's a special raised structure that contains a nervous tissue that allows you to have a violent coughing when necessary, such as when food enters your lungs or when other times when it's necessary. And eventually the bronchi splits off into your secondary bronchi or into tertiary bronchi into lungs. The bronchi become bronchioles, and the bronchioles become terminal bronchioles. That's where gas exchange occurs. So, before we take a look at the very end of the conducting zone, here's the beginning of the respiratory zone. It's defined by the presence of alveoli, and there's a lot of them. There's approximately 300 million alveoli in the human body, and that is so prevents a tremendous surface area for gas exchange. So we can see that through this diagram. So through the bronchi, it opens up into the alveolar sacs, the alveoli, the alveolus, the alveolar sacs, and the alveolar pores. And so it ends in the smallest pores, where eventually the alveolus will contain and exchange with capillaries, and that's where the gas exchange occurs. You can see the oxygenated blood carrying the oxygenated blood through the heart, and that the deoxygenated vessels will carry through, and that's where the rest of the bodies will become. Oxygen will enter the blood, and the carbon dioxide will leave. Let's take a look into the pores. So within the pores, there's the capillary, the respiratory membrane, and there's three main types of cells. First is the type 1 the squamous epithelial cell. These are created mainly to provide form. There is a type 2 alveolar cell that secretes pulmonary surfactant, so there's less friction when they expand and contract. And finally, there's the alveolar macrophage, which removes pathogens that are still in the system. And within the blood, the gas exchange occurs where carbon dioxide is moved in the body, and the oxygenation blood enters the blood. And that's where the acid-base balance mechanism occurs. Because so there's a carbonic system where the hydrogen in the leaves, and that creates a semblance of balance, a slight balance of acid base. The body has other mechanisms for acid base balance, but the carbonic system is certainly one of the most important systems for acid base balance. Next, let's take a look at the lungs. There's the lungs has three parts. There's your right lung is slightly shorter and wider. It has three lobes and two fissures because the left lung has a heart in there, so it has only one fissure and two lobes, and there's an oblique at the end for where the heart goes. And each segment of the lung receives its own air and is supplied by its own artery. Now, the bronchial arteries create systemic blood pressure, and that's where the lower oxygenated blood will become the higher oxygenated blood. And the body helps with breathing with the intercostal muscles and with the pleural sacs. So between your lungs and the intercostal muscles, there is a pleural cavity. Between that, there's a pleural sac and a visceral pleura. So that helps in the main problems is the main duty is to reduce friction with the pleural cavity. And the lung breathes by using Boyle's law. When you increase the volume, the pressure decreases, and that causes more air to enter in, and vice versa. So that's repeatedly inhaling and exhaling, or contracting and dilating. That's how our body manipulates the pressure inside to allow air to enter. And the body maintains to do that with the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. Thank you.